tonight, I'm so honored to have my good friend Larry Bailey, a Tyro, just original guy, man. And I'm so glad that you took the time to just carve out this time, this 25, 30-minute segment to just share your story, because your story matter. What we like to do here on From the Inside Out podcast is we like to use real life stories of, and in those real life stories, our main mission is breaking the cycles of self-destruction and poverty in generations to come. So I'm so excited, man, to have you here, and it's going to be a great night. So I got a few questions that I want to ask you just right up front.
Absolutely.
So you did time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How much time did you do?
Oh, I did 8 years, man.
Okay.
8 long, hard years.
8 years.
Yes, sir.
Wow,
Greg.
that's a long time.
Absolutely.
And of course, I know you had family, you
Yes,
had
sir.
kids, you had people that you left behind.
Yes, sir.
So let me ask you this. From when you first got your sentence, right? From when the judge hit the gavel,
Boom.
boom. How did you react? Was you in denial? Was you angry? Did grief? Did any of those things kick in? Was you in denial?
Wow, Greg, you bringing all those emotions back. And I was a mix of all those emotions, a mixture of every single last one of them.
Okay.
I was angry. I was in denial. Man, I got to do 8 years to the door. I was only a driver. I didn't even do this. You know, I felt like the victim. You know what I'm saying? I had all kind of things running through my head. But then again, being an adult, I had to accept accountability because I put myself there.
You had to accept accountability.
I had to-
That's, you know, and for our viewers, they need to understand what we teach in that curriculum, Tyro. We're telling every man, woman that take that program, we're saying face everything and recover. So you telling me that at some point in your incarceration, you had to accept the fact that you was there.
Yeah, and I accepted that fact pretty quickly, right?
Okay, let's
You
talk
know,
about that.
You know, when I first got into the county, you know, it's like, okay, boom, I got a party to the crime of armed robbery that can possibly be bumped up to actual armed robbery.
Right.
So, you know, I get in there, I start doing my push-up. It's like, you know, I maybe be going to prison. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I just had to get myself together mentally to know, like, yeah, it's a possibility you'll be going to prison because you got caught with what you got caught with. Yeah.
So did you have any kids at that time?
Yes, sir. I had one biological son and I had 2 stepkids. So I was the father of 3 kids at the time.
So how old were they?
Okay, Junior at the time was 2, Tika was 7, and Tay was 6 because they're a year apart.
Okay, they were 6 years old. Wow, man. And how did that affect your family, man?
Oh man, it was really tragic. Like, far as my kid's mother, she moved to Kentucky.
Wow.
She followed her father to Kentucky. She left Georgia. I was the backbone. I was the breadwinner.
Okay.
Feel what I'm saying? So, you know, she left.
So she took your son?
She took all 3 kids.
All 3 kids, and they
Yes,
moved
sir.
to Kentucky.
And moved to Kentucky.
So your 8-year sentence that you did, you basically did that along without them.
Really without them. Now, she'll pick up the phone.
Okay.
You know, she never came, no visits, but when I call her money on the phone, she'll pick it up. Now, she wouldn't put no money on the phone. And I understand that because she got my son. I wouldn't ask her.
Okay. Okay. So that was pretty difficult. That was a pretty tough time for you.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. So would you agree with me that when you go to prison, you pretty much lock up everybody with you that you love?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, man, because years ago, my mother used to say that, and I was so immature. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna say young, I'm gonna say immature. I was so immature that I couldn't grasp that. But as I got older,
Right.
it was like, oh, my sister, my baby mama, my daddy, my grandmama, my uncles, aunts, like everybody feeling the wrath of me being incarcerated.
Wow.
Whether it's just something simple as sending me $20 so I can get something to eat or some soap or whatever.
Wow.
Everybody feel it though.
Everybody felt it.
Yes,
So
sir.
you would agree that if a man or a woman get incarcerated, they pretty much lock their families up with them. You agree with that?
Yes, wholeheartedly, I agree with that.
Okay. So you did these 8 years.
Yes, sir.
You was out of your son's life.
Sad but true.
What at some point made you say, man, I have to change the way I'm thinking?
Oh, being in prison when I first got there, right? I was kind of wild, want to fight, take phone, all the rah-rah stuff. I was in my 20s, but people started dying off, Greg.
Wow.
And then I started seeing some of my other homeboys coming through this same place, this circle, coming in and coming out. And I'm still sitting here. I'm helping people out. So it's like, man, we got to change this cycle.
Wow.
And then I think back to the Bailey. They say we got a Bailey curse on us.
Wow.
I got cousins that did real organized crime type of stuff. We want to say it like that.
Wow.
So we got to break that curse. And me thinking back to that, sitting in that cell,
right.
Yeah, I got to break that curse, man.
You had to break that curse. So you say tragedy hit. Give me one that affected you directly with your kids. Talk about that.
Okay. I'm in Jenkins. Probably like 6 years in, 5-6 years in, and I get a text message on my tablet, my JPay tablet.
Okay.
And my sister told me, call me, I love you. When I get messages like that, I know somebody done left.
Wow.
But I did never in 100 years would think that my baby mama would have been done left this earth. I had just talked to her 2 days prior.
So you telling me, Larry, while you were doing your time,
yeah, man,
your baby mother passed away.
Yes, sir.
How old was she?
She was actually, I think she was like 26. She was young.
Wow.
She was young, 26, 27. She was actually young, bro.
So now, let's talk about this, because you're incarcerated. Your hands are tied. There's really nothing you can do for any of your kids.
At all.
How did that make you feel? I know you had to have a stream of emotions.
Yeah, man, it made me feel miserable, man. And at times it made me want to get into illegal things within the prison system. Okay. But I had to stay focused. I want to go home. You know what I'm saying? I got to better myself for my son, for my family, be a better father, you know what I'm saying? Husband, better person for the community.
Well, that's good, man, because I can't imagine being in that situation, because personally, my second daughter was born on my way to prison. Wow. And I remember how it just tore me up, man. It really, it tore me up. And at the same time, it made me say enough is enough. So I tilt my hat to you.
Thank you.
Because you realized what was important to you was getting home to your son. So, man, I know this have to be a difficult journey, because you incarcerated. So did you have family members react for you? Kind of talk a little bit about that. Did
okay. You? Yeah, I had to reach out to a couple people, older sister, younger sister, a couple cousins, but my aunt, and uncle, I reached out to them. Okay. And we family, so I'm like, can you please, help me till I come home, you know what I'm saying, get my child for me. Okay. Which they did.
Okay. So that's good. We're going to stop right there, because I want our viewers to know that it's a process out there that most men are not knowledgeable of. And that's the legitimization process, because you wasn't married to your baby mother, correct?
No, sir.
So legally,
that's her baby.
That's her baby.
Yes, sir.
So right now, I know, we don't need to get into that, but you're in a process trying to reunite with your son legally.
Yes, sir.
So what would you say to a man or woman that's watching this podcast, that's probably in the same situation, feeling hopeless? What encouragement would you give them?
First of all, man, I want to encourage any man, any woman to first stay prayed up.
Okay.
You know, because I claim this victory through my God.
Okay.
I'm just say my God because I don't
Okay.
know what, you know.
Yeah.
And I want to say stay focused. You know what I'm saying? Focus on your goal and keep moving inch by inch by inch until you reach the goal. You see what I'm saying? Did I hit that on the head or did I answer that correctly?
So, yeah, because what you saying is when you're in a tough situation,
Yes, sir.
where you can do nothing about it, you saying stay laser focused on the goals.
On the goal.
And that's something that we do teach in Tyro.
Yes, we
Because
do.
when we talk about vision and we're talking about setting goals, because you have to do that before you physically release, because if you don't, you can't expect to just get out here and all of it to fall in place.
No, sir.
You have to be prepared.
Yes, sir.
You would say that, right?
Yes, sir.
So, man, you know, I just have so much respect for you, because one thing that I understand, that this is a difficult process.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm not that knowledgeable about the legitimization process, but we're going to have some friends later on in the show that's going to help our viewers understand the importance of understanding your legal rights when it comes to your family. Because what we believe in the Tyro world, we believe that family is important. So I'm gonna ask you a real serious question now, bro, because this is your legacy.
Yes, sir.
Your kids is your legacy.
Yes, sir.
So how is it important it is to you right now to build that legacy? And give me some real life things that you're doing now to get closer to that goal.
Oh man. Okay, first of all, how important it is to me to build that legacy.
Right.
And you know, it's extremely important, Greg.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And what the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
You know, what are some steps that you're taking now to get closer to that goal? Like what you are building your legacy, you know, because man, you working, you're doing amazing things. You working on your credit.
Counseling.
Talk about some of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm doing counseling. I'm doing the children's counseling with the counselor of my son.
Wow.
Yeah, so I talked to Miss Wilcox. Me and Miss Wilcox, we communicate. We have an hour session where once every month. It was every 2 weeks, but now since it's summertime, like once every month.
So what you're telling me, man, and this is important, man. You're willing to do all the work to be reintegrated back into your son's life, because you realize you've been gone for 8 years.
I got some makeup to do, some catch up.
So you willing to do it the right way, man. So I hope our viewers tonight really understand what you're saying, because what you're saying is you willing to do everything in your power to make this process of you reintegrating back into your son's life the right way, because you know you don't know him. You've been gone since he was 2 years old.
2 years, 8 years.
8 years.
He was 10 when I came home.
I salute you again, brother, because most people shun counseling. They shun going out getting legal help to understand something that's very vital. So we're gonna get ready to wrap it up, man. But I'm just really blown by the way you have approached this, and you have truly exemplified what a true Tyro is, what a true novice, apprentice, someone learning something new, a warrior, because I see it. You're fighting for your legacy.
Yes, sir.
Your son is Larry Jr., correct?
Yes, sir.
That's your legacy.
That's my legacy, my mini-me.
And I appreciate you, man. I really appreciate that. And I know we probably bring you back on this show.
Absolutely.
With little Larry.
Yeah, man, I can't wait, bro.
Celebrating your victory.
Yes, sir.
And showing the world and showing our viewers that anything is possible if we just believe. So, man, I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate your transparency, because you don't have to share your story. But when we talked about it, you say, hey, man, why not? Because if one person is listening right now, and I'm just going to talk to our audience right now, I need y'all to understand why we're doing From the Inside Out podcast. We're giving a platform for men and women to tell their stories. This is real life stories. He can't make this up. He experienced this. And we believe people learn from others' experience. So thank you for stay tuned. But stay tuned because this podcast, I believe, is going to teach so many people how to break the cycles of poverty and incarceration and broken families. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to From the Inside Out podcast, where I'm your host, Gregory Washington. And man, I'm honored this evening to have Jeremy here. Early in the episode, we had Larry Bailey just telling his story. He was one of our participants of our Tyro Dash program, where, I mission here is to break the cycles of poverty and incarceration in broken families. We understand that once an individual is incarcerated, they lock up their whole family. And we're here with our program just trying to rebuild the ancient ruins. So tonight, I just hope our listeners would understand that we're not giving you any legal advice, but I've brought Jeremy on to just kind of help us understand if we're going through a certain situation with our kids. A lot of guys and a lot of women, when they're gone for long periods of time, they have to deal with child support, they have to deal with custody. So we just want to try to give you some enlightenment, no illegal advice, but just some enlightenment on if you're faced with a situation where the legitimization process need to come in play. Tonight, I hope you get some answers that will be good for your tool belt. So, Jeremy, I want to turn it over to you. Just ask you a few questions. How long have you been practicing law? I think that is an interesting question.
Thank you very much for having me on. And to answer that question, I have been privileged to practice law for 17 years this year. It was very interesting on even this past week to get an opportunity to go back to my old stomping grounds. I went to law school at the at Loyola University of New Orleans School of Law, and for the first time since I graduated, I had an opportunity to go back to some of the classrooms that I sat in as a student, and it was just an honor to go back there and sit in some of those seats that I sat in before, and bring my family along with me to see that. So thank you for having me on tonight as a guest. Thank you so much.
Man, I appreciate it. And, automatically from just talking to you earlier, I just kind of see your heart for family. So, we have a situation, I get a chance to work with a lot of men and women that are separated from their families for long periods of time. And, of course, we know that affect the kids and that affect the development of the kids. So I just want, from your studying law, just if I was an individual and just say I did 8 years in prison, and my situation was, while I was in prison, my son's mother passed away, and now I'm scrambling around trying to have family members take custody of him, and that whole process, and I get released, and then I'm trying to do the right thing, and I'm faced with these barriers, these legal barriers. They telling me, legally, I'm not, I didn't legitimize him, and so walk me through a journey if that was my story. How would you just give me some advice on that process? Yeah.
Sure, and something you said earlier in the introduction that really stood out to me was that when one is incarcerated, that person essentially is bringing in their family as well. And when you come out, certainly with all of those burdens and stressors, sometimes it's hard to just get started. You get so overwhelmed, so bogged down by the hurdle that lies ahead. It's hard to just take that first step. However, the legitimation or legitimization process, and both terms are correct,
Okay.
um, is is not as daunting as one may think. In the state of Georgia, the way that one creates a legal relationship with their child, the way that a father does that is through filing a legitimation or legitimization action in a superior court. Also, the other way, of course, is if you are married to the mother of your child. So those are the two ways you do that. And the way you commence that process, Greg, is simply by filing a petition. And that petition, once it is served on the the mother of the child or whomever the custodian of the child is, if something has happened to the mother, uh, after that petition is served on that party, then that individual has a 30-day time period to respond to the petition, and and they file what's called an answer, and they present reasons why they agree with the legitimation, or they can also present reasons as to why the opportunity interest has been foreclosed to create that legal relationship. And thereafter, what you have is a hearing, right? The judge will schedule a hearing, and of course, there are legal nuances like discovery that can stall when that hearing actually takes place for good reason. Both parties are trying to gather information from the other, financial information and other information also. And once the hearing is set, the judge is listening out for why the legitimation should be granted or not granted. Um, and again, I mentioned opportunity interest. Those are some of the things that the court will listen out for. So have you communicated, with the child, or at least attempted to communicate, with your child? What about prior to being incarcerated? What was that relationship like? What steps have you taken to create a positive prospect in the event that the court does allow for the legitimation to be granted? So those are just some 30,000 foot views
Yeah.
of how that process takes place.
So my head is spinning with questions. So I got to fire off at you, man. So I heard you say something earlier about like, okay, so if I'm married
Hmm.
and this is my wife and we have a child,
Hmm.
when do that legitimization process probably need to go in play? Because according to Georgia law, it's because it's my wife, it's my child. That process, for as me being the father, is that automatically put in place, or do I have to go through a process as well?
That's a great question, Greg. And the good news in that scenario is that if you are married to the mother of your child, upon marriage, that child is legitimated, even if the marriage is after the child has been born. So again, that's one of the two ways that you can create that legal relationship between uh, father and daughter, or father and son, in the state of Georgia.
Okay.
Marriage is one way, and then filing that petition is the other
Is
way.
is
Now,
is
if you are already, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, 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 I ain't saying anything. I'm good. No, I was
Okay.
listening.
And so, if you are married and something happens where you are incarcerated, and you are already the legal custodian of the child, Then the next step would be to how, upon release, do you um, contend for a parenting plan that's in that child's best interest. That includes things such as decision making authority, legal custody, also physical custody, which is where the child is physically located, visitation, and there's all sorts of ways that visitation can be ramped up. And again, the judge is always looking at what is in the best interest of the minor child that is involved in the litigation. There are several different factors that the court looks at, and again, it's all towards the end of what's in this child's best interest.
Okay, gotcha.
And certainly, I'm a proponent of, and many judges are a proponent of, a child having the advantage of having a relationship with both, parents. So,
Gotcha.
that's something that bodes well.
Okay, so say for instance, I'm incarcerated and my kid's mother passed away, and I haven't married her. Um, so walk me through that barrier because I'm pretty sure a barrier is put in place immediately, you know, because I didn't legitimize the child. So give me a little pointer on that. How would you, what would you suggest in
Yeah.
that situation?
So, in that which situation, Greg, you're absolutely correct. You have another layer before being able to get back in the child's life. In that instance that you just described, I believe it would involve probably the juvenile court in the county that the child resides in or the custodian of the child resides in. I say that because the death of one parent and also the incarceration of another parent would more than likely create a situation where the child is dependent. And whenever there is a dependent child, the juvenile court would have exclusive jurisdiction to step in, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
and address that dependency. Now, subsequent to addressing that dependency, if dad is released from custody at that point in time, then dad would have to file the legitimation that we talked about since there is no marriage. And during that legitimation hearing, argue to the judge, whether it's the juvenile court judge, which if there is a dependency, that action could be filed in juvenile court. And the juvenile court would hear that matter and determine if it is in the best interest of the minor child for dad to be declared as the legal custodian of the child. And of course, the best interest, not to get too far into the weeds, but there is a different best interest standard in Superior Court versus in juvenile court. But that's kind of, again, just a 30,000 foot view of how that process would work in the context of those barriers that you just alluded to.
Man, I appreciate that, Jeremy, because just I get a chance to work with a lot of men and women that, and I'm just going to be honest with you, a lot of things I'm just clueless of. I don't know, and I wonder how many people that's probably watching this podcast don't know the laws in Georgia when it comes around their kids, because one of the number one things I'm faced with helping men and women transition where child support might be an issue and seeing the child having proper parental rights to the child, those are the biggest barriers faced with men and women, especially coming out of incarceration. They have the barrier of, I want to be in my child life, but because the system is set in place, where it's a barrier for me to be able to legally see the child the way I want to. So if we had somebody watching, and I want to just throw a scenario out, and they want to do the right thing. They want to be in a child life. They want to pay child support. They want to be able to have their rights to their child. What advice would you give them on that? Just how do I get out of the mud of all the back and forth? What would you advise them on, Jerry?
The first step, being a former athlete, the first step is always an important move, whether it's football and you are a defensive back, being able to stop the receiver with that first initial step. In basketball, any sport you could think of, that first step, being explosive, being intentional, is very critical. And likewise, in this scenario, taking that first step. You don't know how the situation ultimately will end, right? But I believe that your children are always worth taking that first step. Being able to hopefully develop that relationship, rekindle, restore, build that, rebuild that relationship. No matter what has transpired, I think that the prospect of what can come from that type of rebuilding of a relationship, the hope that lies ahead, it's always worth it to take an intentional and an explosive first step. And so take the first step, Greg, is what I would say. Don't let fears, don't let fears, don't let doubts drown out your good intentions of developing that relationship. And yes, there's going to be a lot of hard steps after that first step. There are going to be a lot of questions that you have to answer based upon actions that have taken place. But part of that re-entry back into society involves being able to stare those questions smack dab in the face and answer them towards rebuilding that relationship. And in due time, the fruit, the harvest that will come from taking that first step, and even those steps after that, answering those tough questions, the harvest that's what's going to come about is is what is being built up from that seed in that child. So I would say take that first step.
Take that first step. I like that, Jeremy. And we're getting ready to wrap up, but when you were talking, something just came to mind to me. Because we always have to ask ourselves, why do we do what it is that we do? So if you would, be asking me, okay, Greg, what is your why? For 8.5 years, I was a youth program director and a youth pastor. And I was able to minister to a lot of kids. And one of the number one things that these kids we had in common was our relationship with our Father. It wasn't the best. And, so when I started doing the reentry work, I believe the Lord laid it on my heart to kick all of my Tyro dads cohorts off with telling the guys, listen, I'm encouraging you, man. I need you on the outside of these gates, and I need you to get back in your kid's life, and I just need you to be there. Because during those years of being a youth program director, I had to do what the Bible say. I had to become all things to some of those kids. And the number one thing I had to become was a father. I'm not saying I'm the best thing out there, but I understood what those kids was going through. And if they just needed to call me dad, or they needed to rely on me as a dad, that was the thing that I needed to become. And and being married for 14 years, beautiful wife, man. We got a blended family. And one thing I told my wife up front is I want to get in here and I want to do my part. And that's what we teach guys in Tyro. Listen, you got to own what it is that you have done. And once you're able to own that, you're able to now, reinvent yourself as a person worth following, and I just try to champion guys and encourage them, man, listen, if you love that woman, get in. If it's 2 other kids in there, treat them as yours, because I believe our society is hurting because the lack of fathers being in the position the way God created it. And I don't shy away from that because I understand that order. God created family to represent him. So it's important, the work that we do, and I appreciate you just, joining in that work, using, your gift, talents, your ability. I know talking to you this long, the bill would be, it would be a bill. But I appreciate you just coming in, just sharing, because that was one of the experiences that I had when I was incarcerated. I say, man, I believe a lot of what happens with men and women, we're uninformed about what we should do to be responsible citizens. And yeah, so that's just something when I was hearing you talk, that it was in my spirit that I wanted to just share that. But I want to give you some closing remarks. Anything, if our viewers is watching this podcast, I want them to know, Jeremy, where your heart lies in this matter.
Well, thank you once again for this privilege to be able to share, and not just 17 years of legal knowledge in the area of family law, but to share in ministry in an area that it is sorely needed in our community. Greg, I think you hit the nail right on the head. If we can help to rebuild relationships between parents and children, if we could do some hard ministering in that area to rebuild that connection, then we are doing a lot to change and transform what's going on in society. The family certainly is the building block, and as we are doing things the way that God designed it in His image, then certainly we can be a part of a great transformation. So I just want to say, in parting, thank you so much for the opportunity to share in this great ministry. We are the hands and feet of Christ, right? And so if we aren't using our gifts, if we aren't using our talents for people that we see, then how can we say we love a God who is unseen? So this is literally walking out, living out the imagery of the cross, our relationship with God, our vertical relationship with Him must cause us to be about His business, which is helping His people, helping our fellow citizens, our fellow image bearers to be who God has called them to be. So thank you so much for this esteemed privilege to be a part of this ministry.
I appreciate it. So we're signing off, y'all. Please follow the podcast on our social media platforms, on YouTube, like it. We're using real life testimonies to transform and show that transformation process. And we want to educate our listeners so they'll know how it is, because, statistics say 95% of the people that go to prison are coming home one day, and they coming home to your communities. So we want to help them to be better. We want them to reinvent and reinvest themselves as people worth following. So that's our mission. Thank you again, Jeremy, for just great insight. And we're signing off. Thank you.